Because in our last two sessions on skin, thin skin and thick skin respectively, we never really did get a good chance to see some of the skin appendages like hair and sebaceous glands and apocrine sweat glands. I thought we would just take a quick look now. Skin is defined as stratified, squamous, keratinizing epithelium with skin appendages. Skin appendages are hair follicles and sweat glands. Hair follicles consist of hair and the follicle in which it grows, as well as the sebaceous glands. Sometimes a hair follicle is called a pilosebaceous apparatus. And the sweat glands are of either eccrine or apocrine type. The apocrine sweat glands are only found in the axilla and groin area. Eccrine sweat glands are found everywhere, especially in thick skin. So let's go to this portion of skin now, in which we can see the parts that we didn't see before. The first thing that you'll note is that it's thin skin, because the stratum corneum is basically thinner than the rest of the full thickness of the epidermis. The second thing that you'll note is that the papillary dermis is not quite as densely pink as the reticular dermis. So that's really a good way of differentiating it. Right about here, you can see kind of a lighter pink go into a darker pink. And of course, it is completely between the reti pegs as well, but extends a little bit further down. The reticular dermis is this thicker, more denser collagenous connective tissue in which you can see clearly dense collagenous fibers and fibroblasts. In addition, if you were to do an elastic stain, you would see that the reticular dermis is loaded with elastic fibers, which you can't really see on a regular H&E or hematoxylin and eosin stain. And of course, there are no significant elastic fibers in this papillary dermis here. Let's look at the types of sweat glands that we didn't see before. Whereas we saw these eccrine sweat glands, which we said were basically small tubules and ducts, this being a duct and this being an acinus, or the secretion part of the gland. The apocrine sweat glands, like you see here, are much larger and more irregular. And of course, these are not blood vessels, because when you go down on them, you can see that they are lined with true epithelium, like you see here, and not endothelium. So these here are eccrine sweat glands, looking exactly the way they should look like. And here are apocrine sweat glands, which are only in the axilla and groin anal area. And of course, it's the apocrine sweat glands which produce body odor. Technically, the eccrine sweat glands don't, because it's chiefly water that they secrete. Also, let's go down to a hair follicle, and I want to show you a point of differentiation here as well. A hair follicle will almost always have in the middle of it a slightly more refractile substance, which is the hair shaft. Sometimes it's very refractile and not like you see here. And usually in proximity to it, you see clear cells, like you see clear cells with the eccrine sweat glands. But the clear cells in association with hair follicles, all of which release into the hair follicle, are the sebaceous glands. So, and on a individual cellular one-to-one basis, the sebaceous gland cells look a lot like eccrine gland, sweat gland cells, but they are in sheets. You could see perhaps a whole sheet of them, whereas the clearish cells of the eccrine sweat gland are never more than 1 or 2 cells thick. So here is portion of the hair, here's the hair follicle, and here are some sheets of sebaceous gland cells, which of course all have to open into the hair follicle. And I think we could probably see a better one somewhere else down the line I can remember seeing kind of a better one somewhere else. And was it over here? Yes, I believe it was. Here we go. This is a much better pilosebaceous apparatus, or hair follicle with attached sebaceous gland that we see here. In fact, in here, you get an appreciation quite a bit better for the actual refractility of the hair itself, as well as the cells which form the wall of the hair follicle. And you could get a better appreciation for the sheets of sebaceous cells which open up into this hair follicle. And you can see that in contrast, these are sheets of cells, whereas the clear cells with foamy cytoplasm that we see in the eccrine sweat glands, they look a little bit clear as well, but they are always very tubular, and they do not form sheets like we can see here. This is a classical group of eccrine acini right above a classical apocrine type of sweat gland. And that's all I wanted to say. I think we have pretty much finished with skin. I don't think we ever really did see a good erector pili muscle. However, I can reassure you that any smooth muscle that you could recognize as histologically classical smooth muscle that's in proximity to a hair follicle has to be an erector pili muscle. And sometimes they're very hard to differentiate. It's very rare to actually see the little stringy strand of smooth muscle leading up to the base of the hair follicle. But it's very possible that some of these cells in here could be smooth muscle cells. But remember, smooth muscle is often relatively indistinguishable from collagen on routine H&E stains. These could very easily be smooth muscle cells here, and these are certainly fibroblasts surrounded by dense fibrous connective tissue, and they look quite similar. Of course, if you did a trichrome, the collagen here would be quite green, and the cytoplasm of the smooth muscle cells of the erector pili muscle would not take on the green stain at all. That's all I want to say about skin, and we're finished with skin. And once again, because we're talking about shotgun histology here, I would like to leave you with the feeling at the end of every session that there is not a single thing on any of these slides that you can't identify. If we put a shotgun through the skin and looked at everything under each dot, we would know exactly what the structure was. In this case, epidermis, papillary dermis, reticular dermis, hair follicle, apocrine sweat gland, eccrine sweat gland, loose connective tissue or fatty connective tissue of the hypodermis. And that's the end of this one. Thank you very much.